Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome back to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury, the show that helps individuals and small business owners fight back when the IRS comes calling. Lance Drury is a seasoned tax attorney who's been defending clients for over 20 years with one goal in mind: protecting what matters most. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about something that most people don't see coming: how unpaid taxes can actually put your passport at risk. This is the IRS in your passport. Can back taxes really stop you from traveling? Lance Drury, sir, welcome back.
Good to see you again, Evan.
Good to be seen. Good to be seen. What is it true that this unpaid tax debt can actually affect your passport, your way to travel?
Yes, it can, Evan. It started several years ago. The IRS can refer this to the State Department because the State Department is where your passports are issued or taken care of. And they can ask that you not be renewed. They can say that you can be revoked. And that's true for this year. If you owe more than $65,000 to the IRS, you can have your passport revoked or not renewed or denied. Now, that number climbs every year. And so, what we're forced to do in some instances, because every now and then we get somebody, oh, I'm traveling to Europe in 2 months and I got this notice. Well, here's what we do then. We have a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy. The short-term is get them set up in an agreement. And then once they come back, if they say, well, it's going to be too much for me to keep paying this, then we do the financials and get them an agreement for something less after that. Because once you have an agreement with the IRS, then your passport is safe. You don't have to worry about it being denied. You don't have to worry about it being revoked. You don't have to worry about it being not renewed. So that's the key, is that you've got to get an agreement. And when this first started, it said if you have an agreement with the IRS, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. But it was unclear as to what the consequences were if you were placed into currently non-collectible. It made no sense to deny a passport if you were in currently non-collectible, and we got that rectified with the IRS. And now if your resolution is that the client doesn't have the ability to pay anything back, their passport will not be revoked.
So what law, kind of gives the IRS power to do this? When did it really go into effect? Because I didn't know anything about that. I guess it makes sense. Is this more so people don't like leave the country or try to flee the country?
Well, that might be part of it. I really don't know what the genesis was. I'm sure it was passed by Congress. And I'm sure it took place more than 5 years ago. I hate to tell you this, Evan, but the older you get, the more time flies. So my time's really flying at this stage of my life. And so it may have been in effect for the last 10 years. It wasn't always that way, but I'm sure that Congress intervened and passed this in order to get people with large tax delinquencies to try to get those resolved.
So what qualifies as a seriously delinquent tax debt? How much do you have to owe before this comes an issue? You said it was 65,000, but do you see that happening? You have cases. You ever see a case at all where that becomes a thing?
Absolutely. And we've had somebody recently, and they said, well, you're going to have to put a rush on this because I'm going out of the country in 2 or 3 months. And, this generally doesn't happen overnight. You just can't call them up one day and everything's resolved. So what we do is we get the agreement set up, and normally the agreement doesn't start for another 45 days or so. Wow. Because it's a direct debit from your bank account. And, then they go on the trip. When they come back, okay, now we're going to negotiate another agreement because I really can't afford this. We just did it so that I could go out of the country. And so the number is 65,000 as of this year, but every year that number keeps climbing. I believe when this started, the number was around $51,000.
Wow.
So that tells me that it's been in effect now for probably close to 10 years, if not 10 years.
So this doesn't just apply to people that are trying to leave the country, right? It can affect someone that's trying to renew their passport, or maybe what if they're not even traveling at all? Can they still get it revoked without even knowing about it?
No, they'll know about it. They'll get a letter from the IRS saying we've referred this matter to the U.S. State Department
Wow.
because you have a serious tax delinquency. And if they don't do anything, then they're going to get a letter from the U.S. State Department saying you no longer have passport rights. You're not going to be able to leave the country. So when you get that letter from the IRS, that should be a wake up call that you need to get an agreement with the IRS or you're not going to be able to leave the country.
Mm. Well, what's the process the IRS uses to certify someone to the State Department? And how do taxpayers get that notice before that get any notice before that actually happens?
Well, we have a lot of people that owe more than $65,000 and they never get a notice. But you got to understand the IRS is understaffed. I've never seen them as bad as they are now. They're a bureaucracy. There's not always rhyme nor reason to what they do. So some people are going to get this notice, and other people are never going to get a notice like that because I don't know that there's any real system put in place because we get people that owe $1 million to the IRS, and that issue never comes into play.
Wow.
So it's just pick of the draw, I guess. I mean, it's like everything else with the IRS. You just never know.
Yeah, I was thinking about that though. Like, dude, so they just audit anybody randomly? I remember me and my wife got audited, man. We ain't rich. Like we got audited when we were in LA. So like we know people that owe taxes, way more taxes than us, and we kind of got audited. Is it just a random thing that can happen to people?
Well, with the audits, it's twofold. One is that they could just randomly pick you to be audited, but the
Yeah.
other one that's more likely is that if your expenses seem out of whack, let's say you're a business and for some reason your rental expenses seem very high or your gas and truck expenses seem
Mhm.
really high, that's a red flag. And then they're going to pick you out to be audited. And the problem with that is that's a lengthy process. It can go over several years. And so it could take years to get resolved and it's costly. And so the last thing you want to do is to get audited, which is why I tell people if you're dealing with the IRS, do not call them directly. You need to get legal representation. And I tell everybody if you don't hire me, there's three rules. You hire an attorney that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the numbers, but they just dabble with the IRS stuff. We spend 50 to $100 or more a year keeping up on this. When I was just a regular small town attorney, I only did 15 hours of continuing legal education every year. But things constantly change at the IRS. And so we got to put in the time to keep with it. And so I've seen accountants give horrendous advice. Every attorney in my office has seen accountants give horrendous advice. Number two, go local. And number three, don't hire one of the big boys. There's a lot of scam artists out there. They just take your money and they keep asking for money. They never tell you up front how much it's going to cost. And they don't do anything. They don't do the
Mhm.
work. You get some salesperson during the initial consultation. You don't get somebody who works in the trenches with the IRS. And so those are the three rules, and that's what you need to follow. Because if you deal with the IRS directly, they can hold anything you say to them against you. And I've seen audits go criminal simply because of what the taxpayer told the IRS.
Wow. What steps can someone take to reverse this certification if it's already been flagged? Is there anything they can do?
Well, they can get an agreement with the IRS and then they can get their passport back. Or the best case scenario is get it all resolved before they revoke your passport.
Mm.
So yeah, you have to call the IRS up and get an agreement with them, and then your passport's going to be okay. They're not going to seize it.
Would that be a payment plan or offer in compromise? Does that protect your passport status?
Right, but the problem with the offer and compromise is those things are playing out over a 9 month to a year period.
Okay.
And so that's not going to be the likely scenario in order to save your passport. Now, you may want to set up a payment plan, and then after you keep the passport, then file for the offer in compromise. But I don't think that I would try to get an offer in compromise if it was, you had a trip 2 months from now and you needed to keep that passport overseas in order to go on the trip. The offer in compromise then would not be a viable option.
So, Lance, what's your advice to someone who owes back taxes and has an international trip coming up soon, sir?
Contact me. We'll take care of you. We'll keep your passport. We'll get you set up on a deal. And then once you get back from your trip, we'll see if we can't get you a better deal with the IRS.
Excellent. Lance Drury, sir, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Evan. It's always a pleasure to be here and to see you.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to Resilience and Resolve. The IRS and the State Department don't always operate in the same timeline. So if your passport's in jeopardy because of tax debt, don't wait until it's too late. Visit lancedrurylaw.com for help resolving your tax issue and protecting your right to travel. And if you found this episode today helpful, be sure to share it, like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.